I'm Fredrik and I'm the filmmaker.
And I'm Leilani and I'm the advocate.
Good morning, Canada. How
Good
do you have?
morning.
Is like it, how is it? Is like is it snow, icy, or is it summery? What is it? You have a very strange climate up there, don't you?
We do, but it's blue sky, brisk, a little bit chilly in the morning, but by afternoon, 20 degrees.
Wow,
It's pretty
and
nice.
brisk. That's like, my English is a little bit not so sharp. So brisk. What does it mean?
That's why I said chilly afterward.
It's a brisk and chilly. It's the
Brisk,
same thing.
it's sort of the same
Good.
thing. Yeah.
It's good because we're going to talk about language, not English, Swedish, or Spanish or so, but this lingo that is used by people with power to make the rest of us feel stupid. This is something I guess you've been up to a lot when you were the UN Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing. You met governments around the world, you met the financial sector, and you had to face this all the time, the language.
I did. I had to learn a whole new language, or at least pretend I could speak a whole new language.
If you can't speak the financial lingo, you're not welcome to their parties, I guess.
Well, I think that's right. I think they use language to keep us out. Absolutely. So I had the language of human rights. That I know I'm pretty fluent.
That's good.
But when I started doing all this research into financialization, honestly, well, there's the first word.
Financialization.
Yeah, half the world can't even say it.
And the thing is, when I started to make this film, and then I actually found you, I've been following you on Twitter, but it was actually that word, financialization. It took me like a year to learn to pronounce it, financialization.
Financialization.
Yeah. So it took me some time to pronounce it and a little bit more to understand it. But that was the thing that, okay, shit, here is something I didn't know about. So that's how.
And then you went and made a whole film about it.
I made a whole film about it, and I still can't really explain it. So that's because we the artists, we are a little bit soft and stupid. So it's okay. That's okay. But we made a poster. And I mean, the amazing Rebecca Mendes in Los Angeles, the designer who has been doing the artwork for my films, I gave her a lot of words to make into the poster. Mm-hmm. And these are like kind of normal words: asset, profit, bidding war, investment, poverty, gentrification, market, property. That's like normal stuff, but it's
mostly.
Yeah, it's stuff that is market. I live by a market. They sell tomatoes, and right now in autumn it's beautiful. I tell you, it's really nice. But when they talk about market, they talk about something completely different. And
different, and something you can't see or visit.
No, and they tell and they tell us that the market is the ruler. It's the market.
As if it's something unto itself. As if it exists unto itself.
Yeah. So I think market is something we could question a bit. Mm-hmm. Market is sometimes what they decided to be. They said there's not enough housing, we need to build more. And the prices go up because there is a demand for more houses. But we have now in our podcast and in Push the Film showed, no, there's a lot of houses out there. Mm-hmm. But they have taken a lot of houses out of the market. Or what they call the market.
People talk about the market as if it exists on all by itself, like it's some entity, living, breathing entity, like a person almost. But markets, as you just said, are created by governments and by influencers, in particular in my area. Well, now, private equity firms, insurance companies, pension funds, as well as real estate, people in the real estate industry, developers, etc. They're creating the market.
Real estate. What is that? I mean, you're at least English speaking. What is real and what is estate?
Real? No, it's not fiction.
It's not fiction. Okay.
You should know something about that. You're a documentary filmmaker.
That's true. That's true.
Real. And estates, well, that's like, land and an area in which you live, an estate. Right?
Okay.
So
but now
it's real.
You actually dropped one more thing, and that was private equity. Private equity. That's what, Blackstone, they are a private equity fund. Also a hedge fund. It's like, and some other people call them a vulture fund.
I know. Do you know the difference between the three? Private equity, vulture, and hedge?
Who is the global expert on housing? I'm just a filmmaker, So what is private equity?
Well, yeah, what is private equity? Well, as I understand it, and we can take Blackstone because they're the private equity firm I've looked at most closely. But what they do is they take other people's money, not their own money, mostly not their own money. And by other people's, it's really institutional money. So it ends up being money from pension funds that are looking, to grow the pension fund, money from insurance companies. Insurance companies have a lot of money, and money from other institutional.
I actually checked it up in a dictionary. Private equity is capital invested in a company or other entity that is not publicly listed or traded.
Yeah. But I think that's not always true, though.
A lot of the money coming into private equity is from something called HNWI. What is that, Leilani? HNWI.
I've never heard that. HNWI. Wealthy individuals, WI.
Yes.
High net wealthy individuals.
Right. That's good. You made it quite quick. So high net wealthy individuals, they are like a lot of them, and of the
billionaires,
more of this. Most 60% of the world's HNWI people, they live in the U.S., Japan, Germany, and China, and that little group. The money they are sitting on grew 11% in 2019. Right. So these extremely rich people became 11% richer 2019. How was your money doing in 2019?
I was on a fellowship in 2019, just as I am in 2020. So, I can't complain, but I'm not an individual of high net worth. That's the other term I've heard, individual of high net worth, that they invest in private equity. But small scale people with, like millionaires, I think don't invest in, I don't think they're considered individuals of high net worth.
No.
So they're not giving their money over to private equity. But then I'm not sure about this. You said that private equity invests in private companies, but I understand that they create these real estate investment trusts. But I guess those real estate investment trusts, another term.
They're the REITs.
The REITs. I guess those are private, not public, but I thought they had shareholders. So
dear listeners out there, this will be a funky podcast because we will be skate around this world of words, of funny language, and sometimes they even call it dry powder. Blackstone talks about dry powder.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's like a pirate ship coming full of dynamite, something, isn't it?
That's a new term for me. I only learned it since the pandemic. And it's because you and I have been watching what are the big private equities going to do. And what we're learning is that they are sitting on this so-called dry powder. It's basically money that needs to be invested. Right? Isn't it?
I mean, last week or in a podcast, we had the amazing writer Aaron Glantz, the writer of Homewreckers, and he told us about, and we talked about all that dry powder. It will be used at the moment where a lot of people are losing their homes because they are all interested in undervaluated properties, undervaluated assets. Oh, assets.
Assets.
What is an asset? What is an asset, Leilani?
In my world, an asset is what I would call a home normally. But in their world, it's a single family dwelling. It's a piece of property. That's what it is. Piece of property. Let's just call it that.
A gold mine could be an asset, couldn't it?
True. But I'm talking in my world, the assets that I'm focused on is property, real estate assets. So office buildings, apartment buildings, hotels, motels, single family homes.
That's assets for them.
Those are all assets for them.
Yeah.
And for them and their investors. They don't view it as an asset for the end user, for the tenant.
And they are now sitting on this dry powder and wait to see if our assets are going to suffer.
Yes. Well, I heard news this morning that Blackstone is sitting on the largest ever real estate debt fund, $8 billion US. And I assume that's right now dry powder. They didn't refer to it as dry powder. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
This fund is called Breeds 4. Breeds 4. It's what is it? It's a part of Blackstone real estate debt strategies. They have 26 billion of assets under management. So, and then of course Blackstone Real Estate has a total of 167 billion of investor capital. And I'm reading now from a press release from Blackstone.
So this is a new $8 billion that's going to be added to the 167 billion under management at the moment, right?
Yeah. And this Breeds 4 is then a fund that has a funny name. And that funny fund can then, these high net wealthy individuals buy into, or pension funds or others buy into that fund, and they want their money to grow, and so they don't really know what they're buying into. They know it probably could be somebody's home or so on. Yeah.
You know what I heard last week? I've been trying to speak to experts in the area of financialization, not necessarily housing and financialization, but just financialization. And someone told me last week that they actually cannot tell their investors where the money is being invested.
They're not allowed to?
Yes.
What? Oh. So that means, because the pension funds, they have asset managers. What is an asset manager, Leilani? You met some of them. You met them in Korea, I know. We shot that in the film.
Yeah. Well, that was such an interesting interview, actually, in the film, because it was the first time I'd spoken to a pension fund. And what they told me was they had been instructed by their national level government to get a better return on their investments, that they weren't doing well enough for pensioners in Korea, in South Korea. And so they, started scanning around and decided that they should give their money to a private equity firm that would be investing in what they call, another term, alternative asset class. So alternative assets are not stock, as I understand it, not stocks and bonds and the more usual assets. And so they said that they had approached Blackstone and given them their money, but that they didn't know where their money was being invested, only that Blackstone was investing it on their behalf. So now I understand that they aren't told by Blackstone or other private equities where the money's going. That sounds pretty bad to me. I mean, in the environmental world, would we allow that?
No, I mean, I don't really have any money and any savings, but if the small stuff money I have, I would prefer that it goes to make the world better.
Yeah.
And I could happily accept a smaller return on that investment. I don't even see it as an investment. I see it as a saving,
Right. Yeah.
And I want that money to be a part of building a better world.
But don't you want to know exactly where your money is going? Like, if I had money to invest, I'm not going to hand it over to someone to invest, and then I find out that it's being invested in evicting people or in arms trade or arms manufacturing or
burning down Amazonas.
Yeah. I want to know exactly where my investment is going. I would think pension funds would want to know.
And do you? Do you know?
Do I know?
Do
where
I
mine...
know?
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I've actually been in fight with my bank too, because they're so-called sustainable funds. We're also into the soya business in Brazil, and I said, "Fuck, sorry."
Oh my God.
Are we allowed to have swear words in this
you're
podcast?
not. Well, I think we have to declare it in our.
Is it?
In our blurb? Yeah, we have to say there are swear words. Yeah.
Is that
okay.
because of the America, who is such a
controller of free speech?
Yeah. Okay. So how are we doing now? We've talked about financialization, dry powder. There's something called security. I love this sign. I will show it here for you.
Okay.
Security, the state of being free of danger or threat. That's how we know. That's the word security.
Yes.
But a security is also a tradable financial asset.
Yeah.
So what is a tradable financial asset? Is that a house?
I guess
Yeah,
so.
it could be. I guess so, because you can then have that.
Well, and there's security, a security, and then there's securitization. And that's where
You're the
get
expert,
a loan,
remember?
trying to be an expert.
Yeah.
It's where you get a loan and then you have to secure it against something. It's like, I think a bit like collateral maybe. So if I have a home, I could secure a loan against my home.
Yeah.
If I don't pay off the loan, then my home could be taken over by the bank and sold. I guess that's how it works.
So it's that, in that sense, the security is like the opposite of security. The state of being free of danger or threat, but you put your home as a security, and then you're fucked. We've already been there. Then you have some troubles, you know?
Yeah, isn't that right?
Yeah, so security is like a scary thing, and it's a good thing. But in the financial lingo, security is something that makes people's lives suck, basically.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I guess so.
Am I wrong, or I'm just being Swedish?
Now I'm thinking about, well, I wouldn't want to weigh in on that, but mortgage-backed securities. So that's what I think I described. It was a mortgage-backed security where you're using the mortgage of my home. Oh, I don't know.
You know what? We will have a lot of emails coming now to pushback@wgfilm.se. A lot of emails complaining about the low level of knowledge of this financial sector that employs so many people. It's actually a big industry, and there are a lot of honorable people working in the financial industry. And now we are not paying them respect.
Oh, you think people will complain about that?
Yes, because we you have been a special rapporteur for 6 years. I've done a film. We worked on this for 4 years, and I have problems explaining stuff. You know?
Well, I'm hoping other people will write in and help us to understand. I'm now going a little deeper. This year I'm spending some time going a little deeper to better understand not just the terms, but their impact and how the terms actually function in terms of housing, so that I can then develop a set of guidelines to curb this and make sure people's human rights aren't violated.
So there is also a counter language we must say. So I just mentioned vulture fund. That is not something they would use. They wouldn't call themselves vultures.
No.
But why do Aaron Glantz and you and others call these people vultures?
I love that term. I mean, what do vultures do? They prey on the weak. So they survey. Vultures fly over landscapes, and they're looking for their prey. And then when they find it, they go in, they seize it, and they're merciless. So that is what these funds do. I heard someone saying the other day on a podcast, I think, that they use technology, some of these funds, and they are scanning real estate markets around the world every 30 seconds for fluctuations, changes to determine. I think it was actually in a podcast that Aaron Glantz, Homewreckers author, was in. And so they're constantly scanning and surveying, just like vultures.
Yeah, and I actually, I'm quite certain that Blackstone and other these big players, their knowledge about what's going on in the economy around the planet is much larger than any government. They have ways of sensing what's cooking. That's why they're also been able to go stronger out of any financial crisis. I mean, in 2008, they sold off a lot of stuff 2007, and then they waited until 2011, 2012 to enter big time with a lot of dry powder. That's also that time. And then, I mean, Blackstone is so much bigger now than they were before. And of course, this time, the pandemic crisis, and as Aaron Glantz also talked about, that still not time to shop the big stuff, because when people, normal working people, when they can't pay their mortgages, then it's the time to buy their undervaluated assets.
That's right.
It's scary. And this is something we should talk about. I mean, because we need our elected politicians, we need the journalists to stand up and talk about this, to defend, because what they're doing with their financial lingo is actually explaining stuff in a way so they are the only ones who can talk about it. Actually, I'm going to show you a little clip from the film where our dear friend Saskia Sassen talks a little bit about these issues. So let's listen to Saskia.
The value of all real estate that functions as an asset is $217 trillion. That's more than global GDP of all the countries in the world, of all the economies in the world. So you know that you're dealing with something that exits the domain of what we would call money. They're highly camouflaged extractions because they come in the shape of extraordinarily complex instruments that nobody who's not in that business can understand. The political classes, instead of doing their homework and saying, we've left traditional banking, we could all understand that, something else has happened. It's so complex that we delegate to the experts. Who are the experts? It's the financial sector itself.
So the only people who can speak that language are the ones the governments are hiring, and then they are delivering back to the same sector. It's really, really scary. And also Aaron Glantz talked about that in that podcast we made with him about this Mnuchin.
Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, who used to own a bank and was very much involved in foreclosures during the global financial crisis out in California.
He got the bank free from the government.
Yeah.
And then he made at least $3.4 billion out of that business. And then he was awarded with getting into Trump's government.
Yeah. In a very, very powerful position, Treasury Secretary. And now he's in charge of giving out all the bailout dollars.
He's now printing money for his own friends. Basically.
But I think that self-referential stuff that Saskia talks about, one, I find very helpful for someone like me, as you know, I'm just a human rights lawyer, and I found myself in this financial world, and I often feel like inadequate, incompetent, ignorant, but that is intentional. I mean, people like me are not meant to be in that world, and I derive some comfort from it. When I'm starting to feel really stupid, it's like, okay, wait. This is because they speak a different language. They have created an insular world that they don't want penetrated by people like me. So it's okay. And I remember Saskia saying that to me, like, so where does it break down for you? And, you know, I said, I don't know, something. And then she's like, yeah, that's exactly where they want it to break down for you, because they don't want you in. And I feel that all the time. Every time I read a press release from Blackstone. They're not speaking to me, right? They're speaking to their community.
Asset managers. I saw a story on Bloomberg's about our friends, the oat milk producers, Oatly, my friends here in Malmö. And they're considering an IPO.
Another good term.
What is an IPO?
An initial public offering. And you know who else is seeking an IPO of relevance? Airbnb.
That's right.
And so the question is to me, well, who cares about an IPO? We used to hear about IPOs and startups all the time, right? Facebook and et cetera. And now I don't totally get it all, but I think there's a way in which an IPO can be good, because when you take a company from private to public, there's more accountability, I think, right? There's accountability to the shareholders, at least. And you're now a public company, which means I think your books have to be more open. So I think that's good.
But then you also enter into the logic of growth.
Exactly.
The shares, Oatly invited Blackstone into their business, and now there will be an IPO. They think the valuation is much as $5 billion. And of course, the idea is to make it worth as much as possible, because that means that Blackstone's investment of $200 million into Oatly will grow really quick, so they can exit.
Does it also mean that the shares are more expensive, so then they generate more capital?
Yeah. And of course, then when it's then listed, they can go up, they can go down. But it's like, but the whole idea of Blackstone is that because you become a part of the Blackstone family, with all the Blackstone companies who can help each other to pump up the values, so they can all exit with a bunch of money. But interesting in this Bloomberg story is they mentioned 3 names, and it's not Blackstone. It's Oprah Winfrey, Jay-Z, Natalie Portman. So they are still selling this story, the IPO with famous people.
Yes, I noticed that.
It's not really honest, is it?
No, it's not. And that's a purposeful omission, for sure.
That's something they sell to us,
Yeah, exactly.
To the public. So to the public, we are selling famous people. To the asset managers, they have a different lingo. Exactly. So we are the stupid guys.
Yeah.
Oatly, we are disappointed.
Very disappointed. One of the things I'm looking at, and others are certainly looking at this, I'm looking at it from a human rights point of view, others are looking at it from other vantage points, but there's a big movement to challenge the IPO of Airbnb. These organizations like Fairbnb, there's a big movement in Toronto, but many other cities, they've come together. They wrote a letter to the Securities Exchange Commission.
Securities Exchange Commission. Is that something in Canada?
No, it's in the States.
Okay, so if it was Canadian, they would have funny hats, I was thinking of, but it's not.
But maybe there's a Canadian Securities Exchange Commission.
Okay, with funny hats.
With funny hats and red suits of some sort.
Yeah, if it was the British, they would have wigs, wouldn't they?
That's right. And funny ties.
Yeah, funny ties,
So the question is, can anyone how can we influence this IPO process? People are trying to weigh in. I guess it's to change the valuation of Airbnb and to be very honest in the description of the company when it goes public. So I guess you have to, when it goes public, you have to sort of disclose the weaknesses. And so they want it to be reflected that many communities, cities, and city governments around the world are regulating this. It's not going to be that profitable. There's resistance, et cetera. I think it's really interesting. And
that's really cool, because that's something they will not like.
Exactly.
These guys,
it's
want
a pushback.
It's the pushback, and we love pushback. That's actually our expression, pushback. A lot of other people also, but I think this is Pushback Talks.
Yeah.
Leilani Farah.
That's
the
me.
hero of Push the Film. You can go to Push the Film website and watch the film. You can see Leilani. Before, when I was in school, you could see the film backwards. I don't know if you can do that with this one, but it would be fun. You know, see you walk backwards. No, sorry, it's a bad joke. I'm a little bit tired today, but it's probably okay. So there is another word that they don't really use so much. It's called eviction. Because
that's in my world. That's my world.
That's in your world, yeah. Because what would they call that?
You know, Fredrik, maybe it's a word that spans the world, the worlds. I mean, maybe they would just call it displacement. I don't know what they call it when they try to remove tenants so that they can increase the rents.
I think they talk about renew.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Regeneration of the units or something.
Yeah,
they talk about the unit, not the people.
And development.
Yeah, that's right.
Development. And of course, as Akelius, the Swedish Bahamas-based housing company that you made a report on, they would call it building luxury units.
Yes.
Like they're making houses into a better market, to
Higher
the
market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, so they want to be the Rolls Royces of. So some people drive in small cars, some people can afford a bigger car, and Akelius want to provide for the people who can ride a bigger car. It's of course all a lie, because they are actually the same apartments. They will just put in some stupid stuff so they can push the rents up. But this is like, and that's also part of the language. They will never say that we are going to kick people out. Or push people out.
Upgrading units.
Push is also actually, that's also our language. And I think there's been some success with when we've been out with a film. Push is one of those. People talk about being pushed out.
Absolutely.
And the push factor. And I think maybe the most important thing is housing is a human right. That's what you say all the time.
That's my language. Oh, now I feel comfortable. I'm relaxed now. My shoulders went down.
Yeah, that's good. But housing, isn't that a boring word?
Oh, it's the most boring word.
Yeah.
And when you talk housing, everyone thinks of a construction site, buildings and hard hats, and housing is boring. But human rights is not.
A home is a human right.
Yeah.
A safe home.
Yeah. In fact, I've been working with some cities here in Canada, and that's the language they preferred. So they've started a pretty amazing little working group, 12 cities, and they're calling it the Right to Home Working Group. I like it. I think it's okay. It's not strictly with the law, but we know what they mean, and I like it. It resonates with people. You feel, the minute you hear the word home, you start feeling like you're going to have a cup of tea and you have a cozy blanket. Okay, I live in the north.
You need the cozy blankets.
That's
but
right.
It's good to know, Leilani, that we actually have listeners in 85 countries. I think that's kind of cool. It means that there is a need of a pushback in many countries, and there's also a need to understand what's going on. But I mean, when Blackstone describes themselves, it's also they are everywhere. So it's like it's probably totally the pushback and the push is existing all over the planet.
But you know, part of the pushback, which is why I was so happy to do this episode of our Pushback Talks podcast, part of the pushback is we have to start feeling less self-conscious about not understanding their language, but still trying to use it. We have to start feeling more comfortable moving into their world. And that requires us to try to understand the best that we can, the language, the concepts, but most importantly, from a human rights side, the impact. For me, I always have been driven by the impact. Maybe I don't understand all the financial structures and those words, etc. But I know when someone's living in an apartment and they're telling me through tears that they don't know how they're going to pay their rent because it's been increased by 30% overnight, I know that's a human rights violation there. It's presented to me. And so if we keep those things as our starting point, but allow ourselves the courage to enter a different world, then we're pushing back too.
It's been nice to talk to you again, Leilani. I think we're doing fine, don't we, in this Pushback talks? And to friends out there, we have something called Patreon. So we can actually come in and support this podcast, because we do this totally no budget.
No budget.
So you can sign in and you can send us $5 and you will be a friend forever. And we need a lot of friends, and we also need friends who help us to promote the podcast, meaning telling your friends and posting and commenting on Facebook, Twitter, Insta, and so on, and LinkedIn, and to tell your friends about the podcast, because without money, it's harder to get out. But we have an audience, and we are happy for that. And keep writing to us on Twitter and Facebook, and also you can also email Pushback at wgfilm.se. Leilani, any closing words from you?
Yeah, here's my closing words. This is what my yoga instructor said this morning. She said, "The more love you give, the more love you get."
Oh, was that
That's
to me?
That's pretty nice. Yes,
was that
to
me?
you. Actually, it's really to our potential Patreon givers.
Good.
But to you too, Fredrik.
Yeah. So
all the love.
All friends out there who we don't know by name, we can actually see if you support us or not. So it's like it's time to step in. We need the energy, and because it's also love, and love makes us stronger. And we have to be strong because we are up against a very mighty enemy. And if you have a mighty enemy, you need many friends.
I love that.
Leilani, walk the dog. Or you had a keynote speak somewhere.
I have a keynote speech in 20 minutes.
Oh my God, you have to hurry up.
Put my head down. Prepare.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, and talk soon. Ciao.
Bye, Fredrik.